Hello, my dear friends. It's Monday, and that means we have our wonderful broadcast with Mikhail Shetelman. Mikhail, hello.
Hello, Vladimir.
Mikhail, I propose to start with something pleasant, with the victory of Alexander Usyk.
Yes, the victory is certainly interesting.
They are Indigan in Russia. That is, the Serbs did not like this victory very much. They say Fury sold the fight. What can you say about this? Fury sold the fight.
Did Fury sell the fight? No, I don't know. Nobody sold the fight. Fury couldn't do anything. I not only watched it, but I also commented for the second time. Yes, and but what can I say? Well, of course, the second fight is not comparable to the first, that's fair. Probably the first fight happens once in a lifetime. This was the most unique. That first Usyk-Fury fight was probably the most unique fight in Usyk's career. Because fighting with such a truly great boxer and defeating him is as cool as it was last time, and now everything was so technically right. But Fury didn't sell the fight. Fury was afraid. He was just afraid to do something more aggressive, and that's why, in fact, he lost. Therefore, he lost because the applicant had to show something. It was a rather sad fight, honestly, it seems to me.
I watched it, of course.
Yes, I can say that I was overwhelmed with emotions. In the first fight, I was overwhelmed with emotions. In this, I looked like this: oh yeah, it's cool, it's great, yes, it's good, we won, well done, that's all. Well, actually, the audience did the same. There were 450,000 people who watched this fight on my channel. Well, I didn't show the fight, that's clear.
Well, naturally, you couldn't show the fight, you commented on it. Well, that's normal, there is such a format, right?
Yes, there is a format called Watching with Shetelman. Last time it was 500,000, now it's 450,000. But as they say, Ukraine is on the map. Yes, you know there is such an expression in Israel: Israel is on the map. How it's appeared? It was in 1948 when Israel first appeared. Well, no one knew whether there would be Israel or not. There was a war of independence. That is, all wars were set on destruction. If they lost, it means Israel is no more. Everyone understood this. And then I think it was 1971, I don't remember. And Maccabi Tel Aviv wins Basketball Champions League. Well, then that cup, as it was called, the European Cup. In short, it was the basketball equivalent of the Champions League. And this was the first victory for the Israel team in anything international. Well, that was a significant victory. And one of the most famous athletes of Maccabi Tel Aviv shouted, "We are on the map." That is, having received the cup, he shouted that was it. Now they couldn't be erased. We are already significant. We are already European champions. That's how it seems to me Usyk does the same service for Ukraine that is on the world map. Because this is significant that the whole world is watching. And the whole world sees that Ukraine is such a superpower in this sporting sense. This absolutely cannot be underestimated. I believe that Usyk simply brings billions of dollars to Ukraine of military and civil aid with his victory. Simply because people all over the world understand that Ukraine is so cool and fights very well.
Well, yes, as for the fact that the first fight was more interesting, it's easy to explain, even without being a boxing specialist at all. In the first fight, Usyk had to show Usyk needed to stand half a head taller than Fury in order to take the belt. And there Usyk had to show activity. And he showed it. That is why the first fight was so interesting. And in the second fight, Fury had to show it.
Yes.
But Fury didn't show it, and Usyk just defended his belt as usual. That is, well, something like this, that this everything is explained quite simply here. Naturally, there was no point for Usyk to go straight ahead and take risks. Because, of course, this is a heavyweight, and any blow is a treat, this notorious lock punch and knockout, equivalently from Usyk's sides and from Fury's sides. But at least it made sense for Fury to take the risk, but he didn't.
Certainly. And you tell me, I see you understand. My audience doesn't understand, and neither do I. There always used to be a tradition. Well, by the way, in other battles before the main battle, this all happened there. The tradition is the referee raises the winner's hand.
Yes.
But Usyk didn't have this there, and neither last time nor now this gesture was there. And so we sat and watched, and I turned off the sound so as not to violate copyright.
Yes.
And I don't understand what's going on. There is no one raising a hand to anyone. Somewhere someone said something, no one understood anything. Do you know why is it so?
I don't even know what it is connected with. Well, it's unknown.
Yes.
If this really happens, they simply announce the winner. Firstly, both athletes raise their hands.
Yes.
Well, it's traditional.
Yes, I see.
And then, well, you can already see who won.
Yes.
That is the one who continues to hold his hands up. I don't know what this is connected with. Seriously, I'll have to search for it on Google. The sound just never turned off for me. I didn't make a broadcast, so I didn't even pay much attention to it. But it also needs to be said that Usyk is the first boxer in history who collect absolutely all the belts. Well, it's for some period before the return battle. Why? Because he had to give up the IBF. Because the IBF rules state that there is no mandatory rematch. And he wrote in the contract with Fury that he had a mandatory rematch. And for this strange reason, he had to give up the IBF belt. But nevertheless, at this
Because
moment...
IBF has a mandatory defense, and he had a mandatory applicant. I think it's Dubois. Usyk had to defend this belt in front of him. Otherwise, if he refused to defend, but he refused because he didn't want to fight an intermediate fight while he was preparing for the fight with Tyson. Therefore, he seemed to voluntarily refuse.
Just like that. Yes, that's it.
Therefore,
so I
now
almost
there
don't
is
know.
talk of him fighting Dubois and taking his belt again.
Yes. Well, in my opinion, it was Dubois who ran out to him, then
I
ran
don't
into
remember
the
exactly.
ring, right? Yes, in my opinion, Dubois ran out to him and said, let's fight with you too. In general, there will also be a rematch. In general, everyone wants to fight with Usyk. Everyone wants to fight with the best, because this is the only chance to show and really to prove something, if they have some ambitions. Anyway, I congratulate Alexander. Congratulate all Ukrainians on this victory. No matter what was burning in country 404, Russian sparring partner Fury didn't help either. It is necessary to state the fact that he had Russians in his camp. Yes, and of course, this has a very strong impact on both morale and outside help. Because, as you said, a sports superpower, more precisely, a boxing superpower.
Yes,
That sounds
certainly.
better.
Boxing is one of the greatest sports. Sport can be different. With all due respect, if our speed skater had won the Olympics, we would not have received such a triumph, even close to this. You need to become either a world champion in football, or in boxing, or in heavyweight. But in general, it is difficult to even remember anything else. Well, you can still win in Formula 1, and that's probably all.
Well, we don't have that kind of interest in Formula 1 either, and this is also clear because we do not have champions in Formula 1, therefore we know little about it. There is also information that YouTube is not working for 80% of Russians without a paid VPN. So I would ask, of course, to give it a like anyway. Yes, you can. Your priceless like will definitely not interfere with our broadcast. There are 5,000 people watching us online, and in those who are from Russia, if you're not afraid, you can even write about the city. I'm just wondering, you can write whether YouTube is working or not working for you and whether you use a VPN.
I don't think it works because, yesterday on a test I judged by analytics. There are moments when the number of viewers on my stream changed dramatically. Well, I have it very weak at the same time. Therefore it changed, but smoothly. It depends on more interest and more events or less events.
Everything depends on events.
Changes are usually smooth, and then suddenly it became almost 10,000 viewers less than it was a week ago. That is, there are those who watch it from Russia. And what is worse nothing is that they disappeared at the same time. I used to have 40,000 viewers at the same time, and yesterday I had 30,000 at the same time. I think the shutdown, the complete ban of YouTube in Russia really led to this.
Yes, and I would like to thank our friends from the Foundation for Aid to Defenders of Ukraine, Lesya and Sergei Grigorovich. We have already shown motorcycles, we have already handed them over. In general, at the beginning of the stream, we showed the photos of handing them over. And we move on to more such news, which means of a political or military nature. What about Kazan? The local authorities in Kazan reported that 6 UAVs hit residential building. The 2 drones hit the 37-story residential complex, 2 more hits for 23-story residential complex. One of the drones hit the roof of a 4-story building. There were fires started and the airport stopped working. At least one UAV tried to attack the Kazan helicopter plant on Saturday. Well, it's still unclear whether it hit or not. I don't know. Also, maybe you know, so please tell me. All mass events planned for December 21-22 have been cancelled in Tatarstan. In general, everything is good in Kazan. There is a moment in Kazan, right? That's what Putin said.
Yes, they like it.
They cannot be without movement. They like it. Now I don't know whether they like it or not. It's a normal question. Is it right that we finally started hitting residential complexes?
I don't really think that we specifically targeted the residential complex unless we had some specific information about this residential complex. Honestly, I don't think so. It seems unlikely. Still, we have a huge number of military targets in Kazan and in Tatarstan in general, and the thing just hanging out there in the middle of this whole thing. Firstly, it is not a fact that we have any data on these residential complexes. Secondly, it is not a fact that the Russians do not knock the drones off their road with electric warfare. I remember very well of massive attack to Ramenskoye. That was a few months ago in the city of Ramenskoye near Moscow. And there were also hit several residential complexes in Ramenskoye. One woman also died there, and there were many wounded people. It was an airfield fenced off by the residential complexes. We are hitting the airfield, of course. I'm sure that if you look at map in Kazan, of course I have simply never even seen a map of Kazan in my life, but I'm sure that there are some objects nearby. Consciously, we hit skyscrapers in Moscow, but these were offices, ministries, and we knew that we were hitting the ministry offices, and we specifically demonstrated that we can do it. I'm absolutely sure that there was no intention of delivering a direct blow to the residential complexes. By the way, what about Manhattan? Now I at least understand the meaning of the song "She Wanted to Live in Manhattan." I think it's not patriotic in Russia, right? You can live in Manhattan, but in Kazan, it's apparently in Kazan. But you know, they corrected this defect. Now the State Duma of the Russian Federation has dropped a law, or at least is considering bans on naming residential complexes with foreign words. Now they prohibited all the Manhattans and so on.
Yes, now there should be a residential complex as Ivanushka.
Yes,
Donushka.
you're right about Ivanushka and all these names. No, instead of Manhattan, they will name it after Russian cities. There is Uryupinsk,
Great.
there will be a residential complex Uryupinsk in Kazan. Yes, there will be the Soviets residential complex. I don't know what other cities are there.
Tmutarakan.
Yes, there will be Tmutarakan.
This is a great name for residential complex. Right here, just before you're going there, you already understand it's an excellent residential complex
well, it would
to
be
live
patriotic.
in.
Just imagine that Moscow citizens live like that, and they have every residential complex named after Russian cities. The Ulan-Ude residential complex, and this is an upper residential complex.
They are purely original Russian names. There does it make sense to discuss Putin's direct line? Was there anything you thought was worth nothing? I just noted one of his phrases about the moment and in principle that he personally is bored without war. That is, he confirmed what everyone was saying in general, just as you and I have determined that he needs the war for long.
I
and
agree
no one
with
is
it.
going to stop it.
Yes, I agree with this. It's in terms of content, but you know, there was one, well, that the president answered we will not discuss because everyone has already answered 100 times. But one thing that for some reason received little attention in this story about these call centers, Ukrainian scammers who extort money from Russians. This means that scammers from Ukraine are calling Russians by phone and
You're right.
fraudulently receiving payments from them. And he named the amount of 250 billion rubles per year. This is
Yes.
$2.5 billion. You know, it's $2.5 billion. This is, generally speaking, we reduced 2% of the military budget. That is, let's consider that we have reduced their army by 2%. Only our scammers are getting money from them. And Putin began to give advice on what to do when scammers call. When a scammer calls you, you should not start talking to him at all. Just say straight out that you will not communicate with him. You hang up immediately when a scammer calls you. But look, he assures that these are all Ukrainians. All of these are only Ukrainians. So remember, before they accused us of stealing gas, so they all suffer terribly.
Well, of course, yes.
Ukrainians are stealing gas. Now we say, no, we don't need gas at all. We don't need your gas. Then they accuse us of extorting money from Russia. But it was Putin who admitted that on average Russians are much more stupid than Ukrainians. Well, it's really very strong. Excuse me, but if the Ukrainians simply pulled out $2.5 billion with simple phone calls without straining themselves because the Russians are stupid, isn't this an objective fact? This is pure stupidity, right? And he recognized the intellectual superiority of Ukraine. Putin admitted this. It was one of those fun results.
But Russians are not intellectually developed enough to understand that he admitted this. That's the problem. You and I understand this, but they will never understand
it's
it
just
anyway.
like fear pills, because patients are afraid to eat them and therefore they are useless. Yes, you're right there. But in fact, if we consider the serious consequences, they are truly quite serious in my opinion. I followed the reactions of many people after this direct line. People who watched it were people of completely different kinds and different scales. And this was the first time I saw this such a large-scale phenomenon. That is, there are a lot of people in it. These are are my people, either acquaintances or strangers whom I somehow read on Facebook or follow somewhere. At the same time, a lot of people for the first time in their lives say that he was crazy. That's right, that's a big difference. They say, well, he's crazy, that's all. No, this is all a statement at some biological level that we're dealing with a madman. And then people describe why they think we are dealing with a crazy person. And this is important. It seems to me this is a big change, because I think that gradually it will reach the Western world that we are dealing with a madman, and he is crazy precisely physiologically. And I'm not going to make diagnosis, I'm not a doctor, but this is very important, because this means that you cannot have any dialogue with him at all and listen to his meanings. Obviously, this is useless. Previously, do you remember, they tried to understand his meaning. What did Putin mean? What did he want to say? They asked me right after his speech, tell me, Mikhail, he has political strategists there, right? That's when they were preparing him for the speech, when they were preparing him for the hotline. Why didn't they prepare this but prepared it like this? But there they prepared it incorrectly. I believe unitized. By what criteria did I conclude that there was something wrong going on inside the Russian government? They asked him questions that I heard. I naturally did not listen to the whole conference. Tell us, when will the course be released completely? And Putin, after long words, answered, I don't know. They asked him. Jim, I don't remember now, unfortunately, I forgot again. In general, in response to several questions, Putin directly said that he did not know or what he heard for that first time. What does it mean? President Putin doesn't know, does he? Why are you asking him this question? These are prepared questions. They are prepared in advance and he must respond. I don't know, it seems completely illogical. It's absolutely illogical. And in my opinion, if before he listened to political strategists, he was truly a political character who behaved as the PR people more or less prescribed for him. But now he is an absolute autocrat, and no one around him can tell him anything. He decides everything himself. I am sure he decides absolutely everything for himself. This is a sign of madness. It's break from reality. And he for the others who are trying to bring him back to reality by saying, no, either you live with me in my alternative reality or everyone is fired. Here's
right.
a simple story. And this entire press conference, which lasted many hours, looked like a story where it was not only a one-man show, but he was also the director. He was also the author of the script. There are no any other people. After the last press conference, the same one that took place years ago, not last year, I mean 10 years ago, what did remain? There were a lot of PR campaigns left. He made many populist statements that were structured well, and there remained a bunch of messages that officials literally instructed their departments to implement. It was he who gave the order to build a bridge across the Volga. It was who gave the order to resume the production of nesting dolls. And all these were orders. There are no orders now. They asked him, how will the K rate change? He answered, I don't know. What instruction did he give to the financial sector? None. And so no matter what he did not give a single instruction. This means that his press conference has lost its meaning. It was also for officials. Previously, officials look at it to understand how they should continue to work. Based on the press conference, not a single official knows what to do. What should Lavrov do today? What should he do now? Does he need to compromise or, on the contrary, not to compromise? Because his speech contained both of the statements.
At a minimum, this press conference speaks of complete confusion.
Yes. What should Nabiulina do? After listening to Putin, she doesn't understand whether to raise the rate or not. As a result, she had a meeting of the National Bank the next day. She said that we will not do anything for now. That is, it's like nothing for now. Well, until we figure out what's in Putin's head, we won't touch anything at all. We were all scared. I think many of them have this mood.
Look, at the residential complexes, well, I'll just express my thoughts. I don't know, indeed, it's absolutely unclear whether we hit them purposefully or whether we hit them unpurposefully. But in this regard, I have two hopes. Firstly, we now have enough drones to beat purposefully. Secondly, if we started hitting purposefully, when I fully support it. Because, based on my communication with Russians over 2.5 years, I understand perfectly well that it is unfortunately impossible to make them interest in politics in any other way than through pain and suffering. Yes, I understand perfectly well that completely innocent people can fall under this blow, who perhaps somewhere even in the depths of their souls are against all this so-called SMO. But they must discuss, they should talk about it. They should talk to each other about the fact that Ukrainian drones are already flying to such a distance, that anyone can be killed at any moment, that it was the Russians who started this war. That is, if they are interested in politics, they will of course come to the conclusion that Russia started the war. They will understand that they started the war and accordingly the war must be ended, and they will begin to establish themselves in all of this. If, as most sane economists say, Russia's economy will become completely bad in 2025, I mean the average person who has not earned any money from the war, when the refrigerator and shop shelves will be empty. And adding to all of this, Ukrainian drones, and not only drones, will hit, well, I think that should make them interested in politics. This is how I understand the situation.
You know, Vladimir, naturally, 3 years after the start of full-scale war, I also have no sentiments about Russian residential complexes. To be honest, I agree with this attack. I don't care about Russia anymore, about its inhabitants, and I no longer think in the good and bad paradigm. But why I don't think that ours most likely are not targeting residential complexes? Because the effect that you say is much less than the negative effect for the West. That is, after all, for the Western world, we must be absolutely ideal. The fact that we hit a residential complex once or twice because the Russians rejected something with electronic warfare. But if we start purposefully hitting the residential complexes, and we certainly have the opportunity, it will look really bad in the Western press. And this accordingly reduces our image. We need weapons, we need the West to see us directly as people who deliver absolutely humane blows and so on. Well, this is how we need to look. Now I speak with cynicism, I don't need to look like that.
I can continue this thought. So it's not us at all. These are not our drones at all. Russia is bombing itself. This is the Moscow regime, that is. It decided something there and didn't share something with Kazan, with the government, and the Moscow People's Republic began shelling the Kazan People's Republic. Moscow, stop bombing Kazan. Well, if it's already like this. And if so to say at the level of the ordinary mid-level blogger like me and my opinion, then I said it above. And regarding everything external, I absolutely agree with you here. And now we can move on this extremely important topic about Trump and his statements. Trump said he would like to meet with Putin. And earlier he also said, here the residential complex Движуха, the residential complex Ivan Durak at the top of the comments.
It's a residential complex Oreshnik.
It's necessary to mention
the house in
the
the
residential
shape of a
complex
rocket on
Oreshnik.
which the apartments hang, everything is beautiful, and they hit the house with this rocket fuel.
And it's empty and pointless inside like a hazel tree. There is without heating, I don't know. Well, this is a hazel tree. Yes, Trump said he would like to meet with Putin, and earlier he also said that he wanted to reach an agreement with him as soon as possible. He also said that this is a terrible war that has claimed millions of lives and it must be stopped. If he had been president, this would never have happened. I mean, this war. This is my abbreviation of his speech, but that's what he really said. Also, they actually mean a little. But what El Perez writes about is much more interesting. Namely, Donald Trump sent a message to Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky to start thinking about a ceasefire. In particular, we are talking about abandoning the occupied territories. Trump stated, it's nice to say that Ukrainians want their land back, but the cities are mostly destroyed. You look at some of these cities and there's not a single building left. So when you say take back the whole country, what do you want to return? He wonders. It will take at least a century to rebuild. This was stated by this publication El Perez. It is absolutely unclear whether he said this or not. If he said exactly that, then from the first part we can get the impression that he is calling on us to really capitulate. That is, to refuse from the occupied territories. And this is not anything clear for the second part, because he speaks only specifically about those territories in which everything was destroyed. And if we take, for example, parts of the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions that are occupied, then they are generally in relatively normal condition.
And Simferopol is in good condition.
Yes, and Crimea too.
Yes, only the headquarters was bombed in Sevastopol. And I think that this El Perez is all rehashes and retellings of his previous interview, because everything is still similar there. Yes, this interview was a week ago. He actually said approximately these things in different forms, but let's say that at that time he didn't talk about giving away territories. They say that he stated this in his other interviews. There was an interview followed by NBC after they all met in Paris together, and he talked about the fact that there is nowhere of people to return in these territories in this interview, because the cities are completely destroyed and it will take 100 years to restore these cities. This is what he said in that interview. There he also said that Zelensky needs to prepare to sign an agreement to end the war. Well, we need to get ready. We know that he said it. That is, El Paris retold all these facts. I think they just made a compilation of everything he said over the past week. It was in this one interview and in one post. But we all more or less know this. Did he tell Zelensky that he should prepare to sign the agreement? Yes, he did. He came out of a meeting in Paris and said, so it turns out that Zelensky is ready for negotiations. So we know, yes, that's right, he is ready. And Zelensky said, yes, we are ready.
Zelensky doesn't say like Putin that I like it when there's moment.
Absolutely no.
We
It's
haven't
not
heard
at
such
all.
thing from Zelensky, right?
Zelensky
It's
said that
not at
we
all.
are ready for negotiations. We are ready to negotiate. What else? What about the territories? Well, Trump never said that these territories should be transferred to Russia. This was not the case. Fact about recalling them to Russia did not exist. But we know, let's be honest, without embellishment, we know where the current Trump administration stands. This is what their proposal, on which they are ready to insist in front of Russia and insist in front of us. What are they ready to force us to do and try to force Russia to do? This is a freeze of the conflict along the front line. This is clear. This is their position. We know that. There is no legal transfer of territory. It's not in the sense that we should give something to the Russians and we don't have to admit anything. Trump doesn't want to do this at all. He just doesn't want to. He's not interested. There is no need. He understands that these are useless pieces of paper to write that will never work. We're simply stopping the war on this line. And then, what is needed for this? So he asked Zelensky what was needed for this. And he said, I need security guarantees for this. I'm not saying again that Zelensky agreed. But then let's discuss what security guarantees are there. What troops will be brought in where we will freeze something somewhere. It was a question about NATO, about sending troops, about weapons, something like that. Trump is ready to discuss this. I mean, maybe he is ready to discuss peacekeepers, weapons, and NATO. But then it goes to the Russians, and he tells them, let's freeze along the line. But the Russians refused. And the Russians say not to that. The Russians say not to NATO. The Russians say not to
It's
Western
European,
peacekeepers.
yes, European. Because several
Yes,
European
yes,
countries
exactly.
have announced that they are ready. America said, Trump again said that there would be no American there. There wasn't an
And
American
Putin
military.
will not be able to sign the paper according to which German troops will be sent to Ukraine. I am not even talking about the Kursk region, where the front line is also. The decree on the entry of German troops into the Kursk region was signed by Putin. This is fantasy. This is impossible. Therefore, that's all I hear. There is not a single new word in this compared to the position that was formed more or less on Trump's order. It was formed last summer by Kellogg and his colleagues, and it was Donald Trump who created the institute. It's a quasi-scientific institute of politics.
Yes.
Resigning from the presidency, Kellogg worked there in this institute, but now he's leaving there for administration. And this institute is directly ordered by Trump. This is Trump's team for developing all sorts of documents. They in fact developed this plan. They just didn't call it the Trump plan. They call it the plan of the institute. The word Trump is not written on the institute. There was writing Institute of Geopolitical Research. But everyone knows that Trump is paying for it in full form. The funds of the former presidents. They also have funds there that they give to the former president, funds from the creation of libraries for something else. And there is this plan. And everything we read in the press now is frightening with headlines. And who doesn't like loud headlines? Even Putin likes loud headlines. And these real proposals are often packaged under different headlines. Let's be honest about the essence. This doesn't change the essence, I'm telling you for sure. We might be offered to hear this from Trump or something like that. This plan is to free the world on the front line. And Ukraine will bargain around this with all that is somehow bargain. That is, our diplomacy will work by offering different options for this prison line and to find better conditions. So this is that Ukraine will never agree to the legal transfer of territories to Russia. There is also nothing to talk about reducing the army. But Putin simply refuses such conditions, but he definitely refuses this. Therefore, everything that is happening now is a stage when nothing is clear. Well, Trump said it all. It will came on January 20th. Kellogg will come to us before that, by the way, to study the question of these destroyed cities that take 100 years to restore. Kellogg will come to us for this purpose. He said that he would come to study the situation. He doesn't come to make peace, but to study the situation. He will draw a conclusion and count how many cities have been destroyed, how many households were destroyed from what was occupied. He'll count the number of households occupied, I think 1.5 million at least, maybe it will be more. About 100,000 households were destroyed. Also, no, I probably even underestimated about 1.5. Well, in short, I think that 10% of what was occupied was destroyed. This is about housing. Well, and accordingly, it's from the entire infrastructure, I think. So, well, this is what Kellogg will see. I think we should have accurate calculations, how many percent of the ministries of the occupied territories were destroyed. And they will say, okay, it turns out that not much has been destroyed. But this is all for now, so to speak. This is all an extension of the plan, straightening of the plan. It's all empty. This is all work that makes sense only under one condition, if Putin agrees to start of discussion from this point. It's from Trump's position. But Putin does not yet agree with Trump's position. What does he insist on? He stakes out only his original position. He wants his position to be the starting one in the negotiations.
Yes, Trump does not want to appear weak in this situation. Seems to me not in his style in general.
Vladimir, this is about image. You know, this is not about ego and image. This is when Trump, he is a businessman after all. He understands that if you start discussing any agreement with the position that the other party brought to you, then it's not about image.
That's exactly.
This means that you are in a weak position.
Putin's demand, let me remind you, means making the army in Ukraine approximately the same as in Belarus. It means to abandon NATO. Well, okay, the issue of abandoning NATO, few people here are discussing this anymore. I am discussing more why we even prescribed NATO in the Constitution, to be honest. Tell me your opinion. Let's say your opinion. But why did you write down the desire to join NATO in the Constitution?
Because as a result, we have come to the conclusion that today in Ukraine there are, in my opinion, 86% of those who want to join
those
NATO.
Who want. I want to go to visit Vladimir Zelensky, but he doesn't invite me there. I won't write in some house book that I always want to go to visit Zelensky. Do you understand? This doesn't change anything.
Why not? Well, of course it changes. Listen, a person sets a goal for himself. If we talk about a person sets a goals for himself. That's what I wanted. That's what I remember.
It's like a vision board.
No. I didn't know about these words yet. They didn't exist yet. This was in very distant years. I wanted to be the director of a TV channel. That's exactly what I wanted. At that moment, I was a student. I was a mathematician. And I wanted to be the director of a TV channel. If I had not set such a goal for myself, but I formulated it directly for myself, I later became the director of TV channel. I first became a presenter, then this. I refused to work as a programmer and so on. Therefore, of course, we set ourselves the goal of joining NATO. After all, this is a real goal, not a fantastic one. There is an organization called NATO. To join there, you must meet certain criteria. The rest of the countries have to say, yes, look, they met the criteria. Are they in Europe? They located there. They have such a level of corruption, such development of the army, such territorial integrity and everything else. And no one would refuse us if we met all the criteria. It's just that no one could refuse. If today, when Finland and Sweden come and say that they want to join NATO, no reasonable person today will say that it's too early for these countries to join NATO. No one will deny them or ridicule their right to do so. After all, they met the criteria. If we became Finland with the same low level of corruption, with the same level of high economic and social development, with the same professional army as the Finns, of course they would have taken us. Therefore we set the right goal. This is precisely the goal and it's very demanding. And the Constitution constitution does not write a time frame for achieving
But
it.
at the same time, in Sweden, of course, I don't know for sure, I haven't studied their constitution, but for some reason it seems to me that, on the contrary, a neutral status has always been prescribed there. Well, as soon as they changed their minds and it was clear that they were completely in agreement, they simply said, "Good afternoon, can I come to you?" They were answered, "Of course, come in." Do you understand what the difference is?
Look, the Swedes are people who, I don't know, are hundreds of years old. They have known from hundreds of years that they are Swedish. And they have no doubt about it at all. They have no doubt that some Karl such and such was a Swedish king and so on. In Ukraine, well, a nation is being formed. Well, it's difficult to compare with Sweden. And it is being formed there. It has been formed before. For the last 33 years, it has been formed across these state borders, this language, this territory. And these people who live in this territory must have common ideas. They must form common ideas. They weren't there at first. Listen, in 2013, how many percent were in favor of joining NATO? There are 40%,
Well,
I think, right?
probably yes.
The fact that there was a minority, I'm exactly telling you, it was a minority. Then after 2013, there was a majority, but not 85%, maybe 60%. That was the majority. That is, a certain national idea was needed. The European Union and NATO, these are national ideas that work. You know, by the way, there is Estonia. The creators of the modern Estonia state told me this directly. I mean modern because it was before the Second World War. Independent Estonia, which was occupied by the Soviet Union and remained under occupation for 50 years, and then was revived the restoration of independence. And today Estonia is ahead of the 3 Baltic countries and the absolute leader among them. It's main in everything, in the economy, in the integration into the European Union. At the same time, it's one of the leaders in the terms of GDP, by the way, in the European Union. And so they described an interesting thing, and I remember directly from myself that this was the case, that Estonia, unlike Lithuania and Latvia, at the time of restoration of independence in 1990, had definitely already chosen its path. That is, every Estonian knew that the goal was to be a member of NATO. But in Latvia, they didn't know about it. That is, in Latvia, they began to sing about NATO, then began to discuss and talk and so on. Estonians knew that they wanted to be in the Western world and so on. In Estonia, Russian was the least spoken language. And that's why they made it this way the fastest. They had no doubts. They didn't have any discussion. They haven't gone anywhere for so long. And that's why they are ahead of everyone. Therefore, firstly, we need all the people to be convinced that this is our goal, our path. And we are going there. Call it NATO, but don't visualize it in any other way today. Beside the word NATO, what would you call it? Who do I want to be? Do we want to be a civilized country in the Western world? It's very difficult. NATO is a simple explanation. I want security. The European Union is a simple explanation. I want to be rich. We're wealthy people, but not rich. It's fine, but wealthy people means social security, normal pensions.
Corruption. Or to the
Low
maximum...
corruption, some kind of social services and so on are symbols of the European Union. This is what it was created for, that we all want to live like this. It is not a military bloc, but a purely economic one. It's economic and social bloc. And I don't know, maybe it's environmental bloc too. This is all the European Union. We want to live by these standards. It's hard to call them anything else. The European Union. It's like the euro. The euro is also a symbol. When the euro currency appeared, it also became a kind of symbol. We want the euro. Well, it's straight...
Yes, I understand. I just asked for your opinion, but that is a subject of discussion. It's interesting. I just heard different arguments. For example, the argument is that we needed to secure the path to NATO in the constitution in order to the next bad power that will come, if it comes, so that it can no longer change it. But our problem is that the bad government didn't care what the previous government prescribed, if you look at it from this point of view.
Of course, it will change back. The Constitution is for someone else. The Constitution in principle very often signifies our national aspirations. We, the people of the United States of America, are creating this state so that everyone will be happy, so that we all will be happy. They have something like that, the right for happiness. I don't remember now.
I understand, but this is not even a subject of bargaining now. Everyone is ready to give Ukraine the right to NATO membership first, as far as I understand now. If something is proposed, then it's good. They don't go to NATO. They are not joining NATO. It is from Trump's side.
Well, Trump can't promise that because, again, we're not going. Will NATO change its charter to accommodate this? Will NATO enter in the charter that we accept such countries, but we will never take Ukraine into the
this
alliance?
is in verbal agreements.
But you see, it turns out who and how will guarantee that Ukraine will not be in NATO? No one can promise this except us. We can write in the contract that we refuse this. Americans can't write this.
It's time to let you go because it's 1 minute to midnight. Thank you very much, Mikhail, for
Thank
this
you.
broadcast. Hope to see you again next Monday.